members from from the national parks, and one from the Forest Service. Well, that was an easy solution. They came out and they investigated, and they had recommended this park, and that was the thing that really tipped Jackson over to introduce his bill. But getting back to the, say, the congressman, he was very much in favor of, what they called the Arizona River Project, or the Arizona, not river, but basin project. And in order to do that, they thought what they needed was the water from the Columbia River. Well, Senator Jackson was chair of the Senate Interior Committee. He wouldn't go along with that. He wasn't going to let anybody take water out of, say, the Columbia River to divert it to Arizona. And the Interior chairman wasn't in favor of the park. They got together somehow, and they decided Jackson gave them a reasonable compromise to water for the Arizona that didn't involve the Columbia River. And the other fellow came out and said, I guess he was in favor of the national park. Well, he kind of held back on this a little bit, because he was, in the meantime, Governor Evans had thought he could solve this problem about what should be maybe the park and the boundaries and things. So he appointed his own governor's committee, and that was made up of most of these people I've told you about who were, say, opponents to the park. We had 2 members from the North Cascades Conservation Council that were, that were part of that, and they were just overwhelmed. Finally, they came up with a park that didn't include Glacier Peak, didn't include the area that's called the Pickett's Range of the Cascades, which is a small part of it. And that was the governor's proposal, because that's what his committee came up with. Evans was an awful good conservationist. I think you probably found that out. And he was called during one of the sessions that the House Interior Committee was meeting, and this congressman, head of the committee, said, "Well, I don't think that the governor is in favor of this. He's got his own park already, and I'm not going to do anything without the governor's approval." Lloyd Meads left the room. He made an immediate call to Governor Evans in Olympia and said, "What are you going to do? Would you support our park?" And Evans said, "Yes, I'll support the park." In fact, the first day of the hearing, Senator Evans was the first one to testify, and Mo Udall on that committee asked him a question, and he said, "Governor, if you have a choice between the park of your committee or the N3C, or the park of the N3C, although he didn't mention the name N3C, he said, which would you choose?" And he said, the governor said, "I'd choose the big park of the N3C. Well, later, as I say, the congressman was still opposed to that, and had said, well, the governor's not in favor of this park. And so Meads went back and called Evans in his office in Olympia and got him to say yes again. And of course, Evans was really much in favor of what we were doing. He just didn't had to go along with the committee that he appointed, because he thought they would would be reasonable people, which they apparently did not turn out to be. So that provided the impetus for this particular park. But that park that was established by them was, as I said, 570,000 acres, considerably less than what we had, and we were determined that we were going to do better than that. And our president went to see Senator Jackson and, and just said, Senator, we just don't think this is enough. We think this is deserving a lot more consideration. And Senator Jackson said, well, people, I can get you the park you want maybe in 10 years, but I can't give it to you now. And which I think was baloney, but now, so our president came back and announced that to us. Then we had a decision to make from the N3C. Did we accept what the senator was saying, or did we continue to fight for a bigger park? We looked at it, we built up all this momentum for a national park. If we came out and said no to this national park, we had all these people who were already in line to say, yes, we want a national park. So we knew that we would not get anywhere with it. So we said, we finally then compromised and said yes. And part of this bill also included, say, wilderness status by Congress of the Glacier Peak Wilderness Area, separate from the national park area. The result was that we found out later is that the boundary that had been done by Senator Jackson's committee had been done for the committee by the Forest Service. The Forest Service, who had been one of our big opponents of this thing all along, they were going to draw the boundaries of this. So some of the areas that were the areas of the low elevations that were nice forest lands and things, they had left out of the park. And but we had made this decision that we're going to come back later, and we're going to fight for these additions to the park. And one of those additions to the park, that was something like 45 years ago, and we're now working on that particular prospect of say, some of the areas that have been left out. And one of the keys to it is Highway 20 that goes from, Seedville Woolley area to the Methow. That particular area is, people go through it and think they're driving in a national park. They're not driving in a national park. It's Forest Service areas on both sides of that road. And so, and then beyond those roads is Forest Service lands to the north, but it's this fabulous area of mountains I'm talking about, where there are really no trees and things. So that would not have been a real, say, setback to the Forest Service. But there are the other areas, like along that Skagit River area, that were very valuable forest lands. And so we've been trying to build the momentum for this, and we did, but we've got some opposition this time. And one of those oppositions is a surprise, because the Wilderness Society is opposed to it. That is a real surprise to us, because the Wilderness Society stands for wilderness, does it not? No, not anymore. they want to see roads and developments and things going on in national parks and and wilderness areas and all that. So they're opposed to us. Senator Cantwell, we think, would introduce a bill if we can get the Wilderness Society to say something different. The leaders of the Wilderness Society have gone for the money, and they have built, boards of people who are extremely wealthy people in the United States. I don't know about extremely, but they're wealthy people in the United States. And the Wilderness Society then has gone along with this particular idea. Cantwell, I think, would be ready to introduce a bill in the moment that we can get the Wilderness Society to say yes. But that's not to be for the time being. Yeah. Any questions you guys have?
Thank you. That was a fascinating story. There was a lot in our research that we never picked up on,
especially the Outdoors Unlimited. That one. That's fantastic, because we thought that from our research we had thought that Puget Sound Pulp and Timber was the main opponent, and we didn't realize that it was Outdoors Unlimited. So,
well, I think that groups like your pulp people, they probably were members of Outdoor Unlimited, that sort of thing.
So it was like a conglomerate, I guess, kind of
the Wilderness Bill, which we had also been fighting for about the same time, and came out just after the North Cascades Bill came out. It was another Senator Jackson bill, of course, that he had managed to support and put through. And he also put through, say, the national park, the Redwoods National Park in California. So he had done an awful lot of good work on the Interior Committee that we're very supportive of. But then again, on some things on Olympic National Park, is this off?
No, it's still going.
Well, I don't know if this, well, I'll tell the story anyway. He had gotten in, built a friendship, let's put it that way, with the person who became the president of, the direct superintendent of Olympic National Park. And there's one section in this volume that talks about the salvage logging that took place in Olympic National Park by John Overley. And Overley was had been a member of the pulp and paper industry in Port Angeles, and was one of those people that believed that any standing timber should be cut. And he had done this salvage operation, and we had taken that on as an issue, and we went so far as to develop some pictures of some of the logging that took place, sent it back to the conservationists in Washington, D.C. They immediately went into the Forest Service and said, what's going on here, and about the salvage logging. And so Conrad Worth backed off on that and didn't become say in favor of it. But in the meantime, all this time, Senator Jackson had gone into hiking trips with Overley up the Queets River. They found a cabin up there, and every summer he'd get together with Overley and go up there and talk. And Overly, of course, was very opposed to the idea of a park. And so the Conrad Worth thought, well, now I got a superintendent out there that's caused me some trouble. I better send him to another park. So he sent him to Great Smoky National Park as the superintendent there. So Overly had a meeting, had a send-off, which Senator Jackson attended, saying goodbye. And Overly got up and said, I'm leaving. He says, I want you to know, he said, the bird watchers finally got me. so that was part of ours, what was going on at the same time that we were fighting this. In fact, one of the hearings, Jackson had seen that Overly wanted to be